Right.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.
Somebody who messed around and found out is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi has now been caught. Nancy Pelosi, we have the security footage of her on the January 6th date, the riot of January 6th. Now, we've covered this before. We've said, wait a second, why is Nancy Pelosi doing these very strange things on January 6th? Now, we can go down through the list of very interesting and objectively curious actions by Nancy Pelosi on this date and the dates leading up to it, including but not limited to an anniversary that's happening right now. You know, there's an anniversary happening right now of D.C. in flames, of our national treasured monuments being stormed, of our national treasured democratic institutions being run over and destroyed by mobs. It's just not the memory that they want you to remember. It's not the memorial they want you to keep in mind as it pertains to the left-wing Antifa and BLM mobs that tore through the city of Washington, made it look like Beirut, made it look like downtown Kabul after a bombing raid, made it look like 2003 Baghdad, circa 3 years ago tonight. This is what our nation's capital looked like for the George Floyd riots. As somebody who lived through these riots, as somebody who lived and was just mere feet from actually a number of these burning mobs, I got to tell you, this was hell on earth. We were scared to go outside. Looters and rioters and criminals ran free. The police cowered in the corner, barked at by people like Nancy Pelosi, who literally knelt to these mobs, who literally got down on her old, diseased, cancerous, syphilitic, arthritic knees, and whilst the George Floyd rioters, insurrectionists, were attacking the White House, attempting to kill President Trump, defacing and desecrating our national monuments, including the monuments to black soldiers. How's that square? I don't know. Don't make no sense. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Pelosi got down on her knees to worship them. Watch.
Hard to get up. It's better not to have on high heels.
Anyone trying to stop these mobs of left-wingers who were insurrecting in the way that insurrection is actually technically defined, they were attacking in order and with the expressed desire to kill Donald Trump. On this date, 3 years ago, left-wing mobs stormed the White House and tried to kill President Trump. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. They burned down buildings on White House ground. They attacked cops. They attacked the Secret Service officers. They went after the very seat of executive power in this country. Donald Trump had to be taken down to a bunker because they had breached the White House security fencing. They won't let you remember that. They won't remind you of that. Nancy Pelosi praised those people. In fact, the people who tried to stop Donald Trump from being killed, Nancy Pelosi called them stormtroopers. And that's right. In a place called Portland, which had a similar insurrection by left-wingers that Nancy Pelosi supports. They're her donors. This is a protected class for Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi said that stormtroopers are attacking our democratic republic, meaning the cops, the agents that were trying to defend the federal buildings that were being burned to the ground nightly by Nancy Pelosi's political party. They won't let you remember that. And they certainly don't want you to remember this. Of course, the fact that Nancy Pelosi, who's been the elected representative from her teeny little district, if you ever want to see a gerrymandered district, Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco is just like the little nub end. It's like the teeny square block of the end of San Francisco. It literally is just billionaires and people defecating on the sidewalk. That's the population that Nancy Pelosi represents. Nancy Pelosi herself lives on Billionaires Row. But not even that was safe from Nancy Pelosi's policies. Nancy Pelosi never cared about the safety of America or protecting our democracy. She doesn't even care about protecting her own husband. This happened to Paul Pelosi, apparently, on Nancy Pelosi's watch.
Fucking said 2620, right?
No, 2640.
Oh, yeah, it literally said in that. How you doing?
Oh, yeah.
What's going on, man?
Everything's good.
Hi. Drop the hammer.
Nope. Hey.
What is going on?
I'm not getting any answer on call.
So her husband was nearly beaten to death inside of the system that Nancy Pelosi created. Nancy Pelosi applauded the mobs that burned down Washington week after week, month after month, murdered people on my street. I have it on my Ring camera. Led to the burning down of my house with my child inside. So this vindictive witch who's going to sit there, and I'm about to show you video of her on the morning of January 6th, waltzing through the Capitol building, waiting to hit her marks for her daughter, who's a filmmaker, so that she can film her on this triumphant day. It was all a movie. It was all a script. It was all planned. It was all planned, ladies and gentlemen. And before I show you this footage, I just want to make sure that you know something that I know, that we've been told by our friends, Kash Patel, by our other friends inside of the Trump administration, by the people who know that Nancy Pelosi was offered 20,000 National Guard troops to stand in front of the United States Capitol by Donald Trump. I know the guy who signed the paperwork. It's my boy, Kash Patel. He's been on the show a bunch of times. He signed off the paperwork. Donald Trump gave Nancy Pelosi 20,000 troops to make sure that there was just no rabble-rousing. There were no rapscallions in the audience. You have that many people marching, you're going to have some knuckleheads. You're even going to have some people dressed as Antifa who come up to try and cause problems, rabble-rousers. It happens in every big march. They're always ne'er-do-wells. Nancy Pelosi turned that offer down. Nancy Pelosi is a villain. And now we can officially prove it. Nancy Pelosi on that same morning refused to take phone calls from Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund. Stephen Sund, as we will show to you and prove to you, has detailed with explicit evidence how Nancy Pelosi refused to assist the Capitol Police on that morning. She waited until the building was breached. Nancy Pelosi waited until they could create a narrative. Waited until they could charge people with trespassing. Waited until they could entrap and create a narrative. And Nancy Pelosi did it all for the cameras. And now we have proof. Released late last night was video of Nancy Pelosi on the morning of January 6th. You've never seen it. You've never seen. What happened? Where did she go? What was she doing? She's the only person expressly in charge of the Capitol security. Well, now we know, ladies and gentlemen. Nancy Pelosi leisurely walked down the hallways of the Capitol building. She wasn't in a hurry. No one was in any particular rush. She just sort of hit her marks, as you would say. Now, why would I say hit her marks? Well, you can see here is Nancy Pelosi's daughter filming her, and Pelosi right there, you can see it right there, waiting so that her daughter could get the shot right there. Nancy Pelosi actually did a stutter step and held up so that her daughter, there's her daughter, could get the right angles, could hit those right angles with Nancy Pelosi wandering the halls inside of the bowels of the Capitol. Nancy Pelosi doesn't look all too worried about the events of that morning. In fact, Nancy Pelosi was waiting so that her daughter could get into position and could make sure that she was captured correctly on that morning. What did her daughter capture exactly? Oh, her daughter captured Nancy Pelosi saying that she wished to punch out Donald Trump. Watch.
Secret Service said they have dissuaded him from coming to Capitol Hill. They told him they don't have the resources to protect him here. So at the moment he is not coming, but that could change.
Oh, he comes, I'm gonna punch him out. This is
Oh,
my
no,
moment.
I would pay to see
I've
that.
been waiting for this, for trespassing on the Capitol grounds. I'm gonna punch him out, and I'm gonna go to jail, and I'm gonna be happy.
So Nancy Pelosi threatening violence, President of the United States there, on cue. I wonder how many times she rehearsed that line. I wonder how many times she practiced that line. As Nancy, play the footage again. Let's put the footage up. As Nancy Pelosi wandered the hallways, waiting for her daughter to film. Waiting for her daughter to get into position to hit the right angles on her little catwalk there as she wandered the halls very casually on January 6th. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, there was a man who was trying to actually do his job. He wasn't making a movie. This man's name was Stephen Sund. He was in charge of Capitol Police that morning. Stephen Sund is a man who was calling Nancy Pelosi's office furiously, demanding help because his officers were being overrun. Now, Stephen Sund began his calls when the initial breach happened. Many would argue the initial breach done by Antifa members LARPing as MAGA supporters. The initial breach happened like a quarter mile from the Capitol. They had fencing up around the front of the Capitol. Rightfully so. Donald Trump wanted it to be like a military installation. You ain't going to step to these guys in the National Guard outfits, but here we are. Nancy Pelosi made sure there was literally nothing but a teeny little plastic fence. Something that like a determined farm animal could have pushed through. And the animals did push through. And the cops were overrun. And nobody would argue for cops to be abused or for police officers to be harmed. Certainly not my channel. And so I'm in favor of Stephen Sund, the man who was in charge of Capitol Police, saying, you need to send in help now. Nobody wanted this to happen. This is a terrible thing that happened. That crowd should have been kept at bay. Curiously enough, Donald Trump hadn't finished speaking when the initial breach of the Capitol happened. Donald Trump was still speaking at the Ellipse. That's a mile away when they started breaching the Capitol. What the hell is that about? That's a little strange. Donald Trump fomented them to do this. Donald Trump wasn't done speaking yet, you jack. Get your facts straight if you're going to argue this. But they don't want you to get your facts straight. They don't want you to hear the words of the frantic police chief saying, where the hell is my backup here? And Nancy Pelosi, the only person on earth who could have sent in backup, was making a movie. Watch.
There was a number of requests. I went on January 3rd requesting the National Guard from Paul Irving. That was the first request for the National Guard. I then went to Mike Stinger, who's the Senate Sergeant at Arms. Now, Paul Irving is politically appointed by Speaker Pelosi. He initially, when I asked for the National Guard on January 3rd, which was a Sunday, it was the first day of the new Congress, he said specifically, quote, I don't like the optics. And besides, the intelligence didn't support it. His concern for the optics, I believe, goes back to Pelosi's decision or statement that she referred to federal agents and National Guard on the streets of America as stormtroopers. And I think she just didn't want the look of stormtroopers up on the Hill. And then come January 6th, And I think what your viewers don't realize is the restrictions I have as the chief of police. I'm one of the only chiefs in the United States. I am the only chief in the United States that has a federal law, a law passed by members of Congress that prevents me from calling in any federal resources either in advance, like I tried to do on January 3rd, or even while I'm under attack without going and getting the politically appointed Sergeant Arms approval. So at 12:53, we're attacked on the west front of the Capitol. I'm watching my officers getting brutally beaten. I pick up the phone at 12:55. I call MPD for assistance. They're our partner agency right next door. And then at 12:58, I call Paul Irving, Speaker Pelosi's appointee to the Capitol Police Board.
He's laying out a timeline here. What does this timeline look like? Because he can't get more forces unless Nancy Pelosi approves it. So as we've detailed here, Nancy Pelosi is totally in favor of federal buildings being overrun by leftists. Nancy protects them. She gets down on her knees before them. She bows to them. She compliments them. She actually calls the police troops that try to protect regular Americans stormtroopers. She berates them. So what happened then in this TikTok timeline? Well, what you can see here is 80 minutes from the initial breach of the Capitol. 80 minutes go by. And what that 80 minutes allows is for the Capitol Police to be utterly overrun. And Nancy Pelosi finally picks up the phone when the protesters are inside the building, when the narrative's been created, when the entrapment plot has been sprung. Go.
Speaker of the House in charge of security at the Capitol?
So you have the politically appointed Capitol Police Board that's put in place by, you have the Sergeant Arms that's put in place by Pelosi, you have the Senate Sergeant Arms that's put in place by the Senate leadership, and then you have the architect of the Capitol that's put in place by the president. So you have 3 voting members. I'm a non-voting member. I'm the only non-politically appointed non-voting member, and that's kind of how the security oversight works. But it was Paul Irving who immediately said, I'm going to run it up the chain. I'll never forget that. Run it up the chain. His chain of command ends at Speaker Pelosi. And I had to wait 71 minutes to finally get an approval at 2:09 p.m. before I could finally reach out and start calling in federal assistance. 71 minutes while my men and women fought on the fought heroically to prevent the Capitol from being from being penetrated. And it took 80 minutes before the first window was broken. So those were critical, essential minutes that we were losing.
Critical, essential minutes that we were losing. 80 minutes. Do you hear there? The man speaks very fast. That's, again, Stephen Sund, the man who was in charge of all Capitol Police on the date of January 6th. This footage is being released now because the footage has been given over to people like John Solomon at Just the News. John Solomon, who has a show on Real America's Voice, broke this footage last night. It shocked us. It further verified that Nancy Pelosi not only didn't take this seriously, but was aware that she was making content. That this was all going to be very, very convenient for her. As has often been said by my friend Tim Pool, if Donald Trump wanted to instantly win the election in 2020, what he could have done is he could have just let the mob on this anniversary date that stormed the White House get in. Open the doors. Let them in. Let them burn down the White House. Run off to your bunker. Trump will be protected. And then let the TV cameras show what the left is capable of. Let America see that narrative. And then in every single presidential debate, and every time that somebody tries to critique Trump, you just point back to the old smoldering ashes of the White House and be like, you want that in charge of the country? Nancy Pelosi defends that. It's such a good point. Nancy Pelosi knew what she was doing that morning. Nancy Pelosi doesn't care about this country. She doesn't care about your safety. She doesn't care about mobs attacking our democratic institutions. She didn't lift a finger when a left-wing mob, fomented by her, that she knelt before, attacked Donald Trump, tried to take his life. She didn't care. She didn't even tweet about it. She, in fact, attacked federal police that were trying to stop it from happening. She called them stormtroopers. Nancy Pelosi didn't even give a damn about her own husband, got attacked with a hammer inside their own their mansion in San Francisco. She didn't care about the people of San Francisco. Have you seen San Francisco? We just did a documentary there. We're going to go back. I mean, it's getting worse. Our executive producer, ALX, was just there. He went to Twitter headquarters, met with Elon Musk. He said it looked like a zombie town. He said every building was boarded up. A city of cancer. And that's what Nancy Pelosi has done to that place. That's her district. She represents it. She is supposed to be the emissary for that. She didn't care. She didn't care. And she didn't care about anyone on January 6th other than herself. She cared about a narrative getting set against Donald Trump that they could use against Donald Trump and his movement. She cared about her getting her shots that morning, hitting them angles for her daughter, Alexandria Pelosi is her name, the filmmaker. And she didn't pick up the phone for Stephen Sund, the Capitol Hill police chief who was begging for reinforcements, along with, of course, Donald Trump, who himself offered 20,000 National Guard troops to be stationed at the Capitol. Nancy Pelosi said no to all of those requests. Why? Well, now you know. Now you know. Now you can see with your own two eyes what Nancy Pelosi was most concerned about. Doing a catwalk for her daughter and making sure that she gets the shot.